Well, yesterday we celebrated the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. We've been celebrating all weekend long. It's a document with ideals that are long woven into the fabric of our nation. Ideals that lift up and honor Creator-created equality and Creator-given rights. Ideals that promote standing up to unjust government and leaders. And as I mentioned back in May, the Declaration of Independence sets out a list of the king's wrongs that denied the well-being of non-elites. Much of that list can be heard to parallel Jesus' way of care and biblical issues and concerns. And I'm not saying that secular document is biblical or even Christian in its phrasing, but it certainly was influenced by Jesus' teachings. The Declaration of Independence represents a turning point in Western civilization. It marks the transformation to a way of governing based on ideals that ordinary people are equal, have rights, and should have a say in governing. And those ideals have not been fully attained, and sadly, support for them by a good number of elected officials appears to be in decline, tragically. But it is remarkable that those ideas set out in 1776 led to drastically change thousands of years of Western civilization governing, where ordinary people were not considered equal or right blessed by their governance. 4th of July weekend also triggers, for lots of us, recollections of humans who did extraordinary things to bring about not just the beginning of the American Revolution, but the successful creation of a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all are created equal. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln, a nation was born anchored in hopes for rights and equality. In our recollections, we also tend to look back at those who signed the Declaration of Independence as somehow made greater than others, but that's not accurate. And it denigrates their overcoming frailties and shortcomings to achieve what they achieved, the birth of a country whose first words included, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." And Thomas Jefferson is credited with penning that magnificent phrase and extraordinary writing, but even back in his day, Jefferson was seen as having flaws. He was derided at times by other patriots and in publications of his day, and he lost elections. And we know, too, among his worst flaws were racism and enslaving humans. And this includes becoming intimate with a woman he enslaved and enslaving the resulting progeny. He enslaved his children. The man who wrote the Declaration of Independence behaved horribly. He was deeply, deeply flawed. Yet somehow, he managed to do a positive thing that has influenced humankind for the better. He was the primary drafter of the initial blueprints for a transformative event, a revolution that a governing body unanimously agreed to. Congress unanimously agreed to those soaring ideals that all are created equal and that each person is endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Congress also agreed that for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. How many governing bodies in America today would agree on anything unanimously? And even if they all agree, how many would do so with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence? Let alone mutually pledge to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. That's some powerful stuff. Something extraordinary was going on. And Jefferson was not alone in being the only flawed human to sign the Declaration of Independence. All of the signers were mere humans. All were flawed. All were ordinary in that respect. What was extraordinary was that ordinary flawed humans and very flawed humans joined together in a common cause against oppression and had a desire for the well-being of others. And ironically, today, a number of Americans, led by some political elites, act like our nation was not founded with an eye toward equality and entitlements to well-being. But the Declaration of Independence evidences they are wrong. That document plainly declares there is a self-evident truth that all are created equal. Equality has been a recognized entitlement since the very founding of this country. And it is yet to be provided throughout the land, but by God, literally, is expressly recognized by our nation's founders as being part and parcel of being created human. And it's a self-evident truth. And it's not just entitlement to equality that our founders recognize. They recognize rights that exist forever. You can't extinguish them. The Declaration of Independence states that everyone is endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In short, we are all of us specially entitled. And the special entitlement is notably not granted by humans, but by the Creator, that is, by God. In other words, with or without the Declaration of Independence, we are entitled to those rights. And it's not just Americans, it's everyone. All men are endowed, given those rights. And that reference to men in context means all of humankind, men and women, ordinary people, even deeply flawed people, are remembered on July 4th as having extraordinarily joined together in a common cause against oppression and with desire for the well-being of others. And the result was a declaration of equality and a recognition of fundamental rights given by God. It's a beautiful thing, really. That's why many of us, I think, deeply appreciate the 4th of July. And today's lectionary readings relate to all of this on a grander scale. See, back in the day when Jesus and John were alive, people found fault in them. Jesus was fully human. John the Baptist was fully human and were ordinary in the sense that they lived lives people found fault with. The reading today indicates John was seen as what we might call a stick in the mud, not eating or drinking the same as the rest of folks, and he was criticized for that. Jesus was seen as the opposite, a guy who'd eat and drink with anyone, a first century party animal. And he was criticized for that. And the parable Jesus tells us about just such duplicity. You can hear him saying, prophets are damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. In other words, people want it both ways and complain when they don't get one or the other. They seem to say we want a straight-laced guy who parties or a partier who's straight-laced. Here's how Jesus puts it in the reading, but to what will I compare this generation? It's like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to one another. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We wailed, and you did not mourn. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. And the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. People want their prophets to dance when they dance and wail when they wail, but it doesn't work that way. What good is a prophet if they just tell you what you want to hear? At the end of the day, it's not whether a prophet placates our personal preferences, but whether wise actions are vindicated. Our greatest American minister, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, did not dance to the tune of Jim Crow. He wailed against it. Our revolutionary forebears did not wail against giving special rights to everyone. They played a joyful tune for equality and special entitlements, God-given, unalienable rights. And in both those cases, in time, wisdom's been vindicated by her deeds. Whatever else they did in life, our founders Transform the world with wise deeds for civil rights, declaring aloud equality for all and inextinguishable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And Reverend Dr. King transformed the world with wise deeds, enforcing such rights. And so too, Jesus and John the Baptist. John with his powerful ministry, calling people to symbolically reclaim the promised land like Joshua and the Hebrews crossing the Jordan River from the wilderness. And he preached repentance, turn back toward God. And John's ministry allowed God to be mediated outside the Roman-controlled temple. And Jesus hooked up with John and his prophetic deeds. John's ministry out at the river Jordan was Jesus' springboard to his own ministry, and what becomes the Jesus movement, and later Christianity. Jesus starts with John and grows from there. His deeds are even more powerful than John's. He spreads the idea that all are equal, all are entitled to be honored and respected and loved. And Tony pointed out last Sunday at the Pride Parade, I was reminded of how powerful honor, respect, and love are. I ran alongside our United Spirit contingent with a sign that said, "Free rainbow blessings." So many people wanted a simple rainbow swoosh on their arm or on their cheek, that I'd get far behind the group and have to run to catch back up and start again. It was so worth it. As I swooshed, I said, "Blessings," or "God bless you." And every person blessed smiled and they beamed. And to my astonishment, many of them leapt and shouted out in joy, especially the young adults. I even overheard something like, "Oh, Pastor blessed me." And I was talking to Chris about this in the parking lot before we left, and he pointed out the sad truth that many LGBTQ plus, especially teens and young adults, may never have had such affirmation. Out there last Sunday, we helped spread the idea that all are equal, all are entitled to be honored and respected and loved. And like I said, Jesus spread that idea that all are equal, all are entitled to be honored and respected and loved. 2,000 or so years later, I got the idea from him. We can hear our forebears, 1,800 or so years after Jesus, naming those ideas, the truth of equality and the truth of the Creator endowed unalienable rights. Jesus, who in his day was known about town as a glutton and a drunkard, transformed the world with wise deeds. Deeds that cannot be erased by his reputation as a glutton or a drunkard, or for that matter, his trial, conviction, and execution as a criminal. Jesus' magnificent and wise deeds can be boiled down to a simple formula that ordinary people, which is all of us, can do too. The simple formula is this: believe in love and love. Believe in love and love. With all our humanness, all our errors and ordinariness, we can do those extraordinary things. And the reading today on the 4th of July symbolize and prove that when ordinary people add extraordinary love to their life, transformative events happen. So transformative. Wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. Ordinary people are reminded on July 4th as having extraordinarily joined together in a common cause against oppression and a desire for the well-being of others, and the result was a declaration of equality and a recognition of fundamental rights given by God. It's a beautiful thing. I like to think of that well-remembered declaration on equality and rights as a patriotic love doctrine that underpins our nation, thank God. That Declaration of Independence has a lot more to it than the self-evident phrase I've been talking about today. But you know what? While all those other words are important and interesting, none of them are remembered like the patriotic love doctrine. We all know and recall that, the gist of it. And there's a reason for that. Love is always extraordinary, whether it is in the wise deeds of mere mortals or in the wise words they leave behind. We can hear how that plays out in its practical application in politics and national identity and the Declaration of Independence. In that document, We can hear a belief in love, the Creator, and acts of love, care and desire for the well-being of others. Our patriotic love doctrine. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty,